Welcome to a Community Partners interview, where we explore the organizations, opportunities, and resources that look to make change in our daily lives. I'm your host, Lilly Cereghini, and you're listening to Voices for Ability Radio, all abilities, all the time. Today, I'm joined by Mitch Lawson, who is the manager for Catalyst, which is part of the division of Southern Alberta Community Living Association. Catalyst is a social innovation project that addresses the issues of underemployment and unemployment for marginalized groups. Employers, underemployed individuals, and the community are the benefactors of their services. Their vision is employment for everyone, and their care values are innovation, collaboration, individuality. Begin with the end in mind. Celebrate positives and have fun. Thanks for joining us today, Mitch.
Thank you, Lily. I'm excited to be here.
Mitch, could you tell us just a little bit more about yourself and what inspired you to work with Catalyst?
So I've been involved in the disability community from a very young age. So I didn't have any necessarily close connection to disability, as in family members and people in my close circle who experienced disability. But my family has a long connection in disability support. So it was always something that was part of my life. My parents and my grandparents, aunts and uncles adopted an approach that, there should be a lot of that community access and that exposure to everybody that, comes from a different walk of life. So, I spent a lot of my youth with, people in my social circle and who maybe my parents supported or knew socially that had disabilities. And so I worked in disability support as soon as I was old enough to do so and continued for most of my adult life. And then I spent quite a few years in the private sector doing business to business sales. And but while I was doing that, I stayed involved, sat on various boards related to disability. And I was approached by a colleague of mine, Sharon Sims, who was launching an employment service that was human-centered, that was, kind of really thoughtful and innovative. But the missing link, as she said, was how to talk to businesses about it. And since I had a sales background, this was an opportunity to merge something I was passionate about, which was the rights and advocacy for people with disabilities, and something I had professional experience in, which was business to business and talking to people and kind of getting them on board, finding solutions that worked for everybody. And I could talk about the positive tenets of inclusion in the workplace. So it was really a match made in heaven in that regard. And so I was brought on to help launch Catalyst, moving it from a pilot project to an actual service. And we've been now in operation for 8 years. We launched in 2018. And shortly after launch, I took over managing the service. And so from January 2019, I've been managing the service. We've grown. We've had a lot of different projects that have been really beneficial, not only to us as an organization and our understanding, but to the community and, of course, the people that we support. And so that's kind of my journey. As mentioned off the top, we're a division of SACLA, the Southern Alberta Community Living Association, which is an agency that was started in 1980 and really started to kind of help people repatriate out of institutional living and into community supports, with that big focus that people were going to be vibrant and part of the community. And that's been the mission ever since. And so Catalyst and SACLA really gel as an overseeing program, or as an overseeing agency and a service of that agency. It's been a great partnership.
Nice. Very good. I mean, that's a long time to be in business. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, Canada was just coming off of the institutional model at that point, which that was a rough transition.
Yeah.
That was a rough decade or so.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, it's part of our so I also do the philosophy of support and kind of the first point of contact for any new staff that join the organization. And we focus on the history of disability, at least in Southern Alberta where we are. And we talk a lot about the institutional model and the idea that safety and security and efficiency was the name of the game. And so in that regard, there was no deep consideration of people's rights. And that no belief that they could be a part of society, and changing that perspective continues to be that mission, which is why we have to talk about the history. And in Southern Alberta specifically, there's an even kind of deeper negative history related to disability with, of course, the eugenics movement and There's a long history that I can go in depth with that we reflect on, because not necessarily to develop a sense of negativity, but to recognize that every time that we take part in elevating people, we are really rejecting the ideas that guided us almost a century ago, and that we're trying to make the mirror image of what people thought of people with disabilities back then. So it's important to recognize that history and how fraught with difficulties it was, and how much learning has happened in the 45 plus years that we've kind of moved away from that institutional model.
Absolutely. I mean, the key word here being efficiency. I hate that word, because when non-disabled people see us as inefficient, mm-hmm. It's harder for us to get jobs. It's harder for us to get an education. It's hard for us to be socially integrated as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's why, I was really happy, reading your guys' website, talking about focusing on the ability, not the disability. And that's something that we talk about a lot. When you start with focusing on what people cannot do, you make assumptions around that, and you guide your support around that. And we can institutionalize people through support when we assume that they can't do things. And so we do it for them, or we assume that they can't thrive in this environment, so we don't expose them to that environment. So we are very purposeful about talking about focusing on what people can do or could learn to do or strive to do, and being a part of that, rather than focusing on what the gaps are, what the limited understanding is, and assuming that that's going to be that person's situation forever. So yeah, it's an important conversation to have, especially when people join this field.
Absolutely. Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
While doing my research, I saw that you have a couple of services that you offer. Could you tell me a little bit more about those?
Yeah, so because we're a large organization, there's quite a few things that SACLA does, and so I'm kind of wearing two hats, SACLA and Catalyst. So on the SACLA side of things, I mean, we're a very large organization, but we're unique for our size because we don't operate any sort of congregational support. People don't come to any sort of day programming. It's all community based. It's part of our philosophy that life doesn't start and stop at an agency, and so through that we've built our mobile team program where it's completely out in the community, meeting people one-on-one, helping them find other groups within the community, develop natural supports, develop opportunities. We work in partnership with we have obviously a large Indigenous population, so we have the Healing Tribe, I believe it's called. I apologize if I've got that wrong, but where we bring in some Indigenous elders to help people who part of their mosaic of barrier is or their mosaic of humanity is being Indigenous and having a disability, making sure that there's still a connection to those spiritual roots. And then on the Catalyst side, I mean, we've operated a few different employment programs over the years. We partnered with a few provincial partners to do the Seamless Sport Project and the Great Equalizer Project, which expanded beyond just developmental disability. We were able to open it up to people who, get assessed as not maybe needing those critical services, but who still need support and they fall through the cracks. And so operating those services was really beneficial. It was eye-opening how many people don't qualify for support, but who benefit from it. We also are working on launching a service for employers. We recognize that there's a wide variety of ways that people can access support for employment, but how do we prime them to be an inclusive force and to make the most of this employer-employee relationship? And so we've started doing some training and capacity building and consulting with some of the businesses in our area and across the province. I also, this isn't our project, we partnered with Gateway Association and launched the Alberta Employment First Network. And so kind of similarly out in Ontario, you have the Ontario Disability Employment Network. The AEFN, Alberta Employment First Network, is sort of the same thing. And so I'm a founding steering committee member, and I continue to be involved in that. So there's a lot that we try and do to impact and move inclusion forward. And so just try and wherever we see there's an opportunity to maybe push that further, we always look into it. We're always trying to innovate and make sure that we're advancing that mission.
Sure. Good transition into the next question too. On your website, I saw that you have an employers section and a job explorers section. Could you tell me a little bit more about those?
Yeah. So for Job Explorer, Job Seeker, we want to be a hub where people can connect to us for support, or that we can refer them to a service that will be able to help them. Our ability to provide service ebbs and flows with funding grants and whatnot, but we stay well connected with partner agencies who can also be that support. On the employer side, we encourage employers to reach out, and we do a lot of conversation around the good business practices that, and the leveraging the benefits of inclusion is kind of our messaging. And so when employers connect with us, or when we reach out to employers, we start with the conversation that inclusion is not simply a social justice measure. It's actually good business, and we kind of give them some education on that and kind of entice them to invest in that inclusion and belonging framework to improve their business. And so when employers connect with us, we'll offer some training and insight. We will go into a business and we can offer training to whether it's their upper management, or it's frontline, or it's supervisors, and just trying to change the perspective on disability inclusion in the workplace. Because I feel like there's often a perception that it's going to be a project, or it's going to be fraught with difficulty, and oftentimes the support that's needed from employers is something that they already know how to do for every other employee. It's just helping them kind of build that toolkit and get that experience that this is going to be something that can work right alongside the goals of their business, and their need to be profitable and efficient. Is something that can be supported by inclusion. It's not something that is at odds with their goals for their business. So yeah.
100%. Because a lot of the time, because people with disabilities, we are acculturated to know how to zig when society says zag, but because we can't zag, so we have to zig. But then we also have more innovative methods of here's how to help me. And if we work together, it becomes shockingly easy to employ us, because we need less that way than you think we need coming in.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so we talk about that too. If you're hesitant because you're worried about how to figure out the accommodations, or how to help somebody thrive at work, don't worry about it. You're hiring the expert on that. This is somebody who has spent their entire life trying to figure out how to do things that everybody else does, in a more straightforward way. They find their own way, and they bring their own accommodation. So we talk a lot with businesses about defining what the outcome of that job is, rather than getting into the nitty gritty about qualifications and broad descriptions of what's needed for that job. What is the outcome? If you need somebody in a warehouse to put a box on a shelf, don't put in the job description that you need somebody who can stand and lift boxes. Just have the conversation, because it could be somebody who utilizes a wheelchair, who's been working in a world that wasn't built for them, and knows how to move things around and do things on their own terms, and they can still get that job done. But to disqualify somebody based off of a broad description, a lot of people are not thought of during that recruitment process, or they self-disqualify because they don't feel that it describes them. So we've even advocated for things like a practical interview, where don't take my word for it. Let's instead of volunteering that hour of time for an interview, let's go in and I'll show you what I can do. It's often eye-opening for businesses, which is a fun part of the job. And something that I think brings a lot of value, because if we can just kind of get past some of those misconceptions, we can really open some pathways.
I like that, because show me, teach me, the whole thing about what can I actually do? Well, here, I'll show you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been very effective. The typical recruitment process is not built for inclusion.
No.
It's built to, see as many candidates as possible, and the language is very exclusive, and sometimes the application process is very fraught with barriers, applying online, or, needing a resume to have this and this shown on it, or this much experience. It's by design, it's exclusive. And so it's just finding alternative pathways for people to show what they can bring to the table, and making sure that there's accommodations offered so that person can put their best foot forward, and be in a position to, be thought of as a candidate that's worth bringing on. And then our role is obviously to be that support, not just to the job seeker or the new employee, but to that organization. We tell every business we work with, we believe that everybody we support has the marketable skill and the valuable skill that you need. And so we're really in this to make sure that those skills and the needs of the business merge successfully. So we're just as much in support of the organization and the business as we are of the person that's working there. And so we're there to kind of guide every step of the way, and just ensure that this is a situation that is successful, positive, and hopefully paves the way for more opportunities for other people who don't typically get those opportunities.
I like that. On the reverse side of that coin, are there any restrictions to the services at Catalyst, such as age, disability type, caregivers or family members only, that sort of thing?
Oh no, as little as possible. Obviously, we have some confinements based off of what sort of services we have or what we're funded to do. So right now we're kind of in the middle ground where we don't have that service active anymore. One of the organizations involved actually had to shut its doors. So now we have to look for other pathways. But we're always looking for kind of creative ways to open up that eligibility. So under the Seamless Sport Project, for example, the eligibility criteria was a self-disclosed barrier to employment that's beyond that person's control, which using that wording opened things up a ton because it went beyond just your traditional idea of disability, and there was life circumstance and mental health and all sorts of things that don't get captured in those assessments for large scale funding. And allowed, we went with a zero assessment approach. We didn't need any even doctor or psychologist paperwork that proved any of this. It was a self declaration, which really allowed us to kind of open a lot of those pathways. Right now, I mean, the restriction is sort of the funding and the opportunities that we have through the contracts that we're currently executing. So in our current state, we can only go through PDD referral, which is kind of the provincial body that oversees the funded services for adults with developmental disabilities. But that is a much more narrow scope of what disability is, and has its own pitfalls, where those walls are being put up where we can't maybe support as many people as we would like to. But yeah, as often as possible, we're opening things wide, opening it as wide as we can, including the natural supports in that person's life. It's part of our discovery process where we're collaborating with natural supports, and that we are, we have a conversation about, if we have to represent you out in the community, how do you want to be represented, and getting that buy-in that, we're going to represent them in a way that paints them as an asset to organizations, and having a conversation about what those barriers are, but doing it in a way that is collaborative and still promotes that person's ability and positive impact on an employer.
100%. Absolutely. I mean, we can't write our own terms here, unfortunately. And so many people that I speak to on these segments say that funding is the major barrier to entry here. And it just strikes me as a little bit ridiculous. If you want a larger workforce, you have to be able to fund that larger workforce. Yeah.
Absolutely. Kind of on your point of efficiency being a word that, we all bristle at. I've been having some conversations with, our minister that oversees disability support, and those funding bodies, and that word has come up. And I always respond to that. The conversation about efficiency is, when you look at people who need support of any walks of life, but we'll talk about disability, when you look at them as a budget line and a cost, and you find efficiencies, what you end up having down the line is a much more impactful and expensive and socially, you have a much bigger problem down the line. If you don't provide that support and don't see it as an investment in the growth of the people that access that support, then it'll become a much bigger, much more costly, much more impactful issue down the line. We've already seen it now. Organizations that support children, for example, whether that be education or FSCD, they've felt the strain. And then when people are referred to us when they turn 18 years old, we're seeing a huge increase in people who face multiple barriers, or there's complexity. And we kind of tell the story that's what that efficiency buys you. When these programs have been underfunded, or they're constrained on how they can provide support, that person doesn't thrive the way that they could if that support was there. and then they need more support when they're older. And because of that, and when our funding is narrowed, or our ability or our scope of service is narrowed, that person then can't access that support, and they continue to struggle in society, and that's a much bigger issue. So that efficiency model is really something we need to break out of that conversation and talk about it as an investment. You're investing in the growth of all people. You're investing in the community. It doesn't look great in the budget reports, I'll admit, where, okay, we're going to increase funding by X number of dollars, and you're trying to showcase that you're a government that is cost effective. It doesn't look as nice in that moment, but the end result is a lot more negative if you don't make that investment.
You were talking earlier about indigeneity being at a crossroads with disability, and they do have in many nations a philosophy of, look, 7 generations down the road. So that would be your great, 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 great grandchild, I do believe. What are they going to be experiencing through your financial lack? If you don't put any money in, no money's going to come out,
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we kind of butted heads quite a bit with some of those administrative bodies, because we're trying to say, look, we know that we can create a society where people are able to demonstrate their value, who can learn that self-sufficiency and that ability through being a more active part of this community. But it can't happen unless somebody's there to be that thoughtful and guiding force. Or I shouldn't say it can't happen. It's a lot more difficult when those people who want to help aren't given the tools to be able to do so. Because in a perfect model, people could receive the support they need. They would be included from a very early age. They would experience sort of that typical trajectory where they're getting part-time work and they're included in social groups and in the classroom. And then when they turn 18 and 19, it's not such a smack in the face that, okay, now you have to do all of this and you better start learning because this is what's going to be expected of you, because income support is being minimized and supports are being minimized. So you better figure it out. It just doesn't make any sense. We could actually create a situation where people are equipped for adult life by joining a community that already understands how to make inclusion work. They've been given the tools to succeed. There's the physical world and the social world and the environmental world has been built thoughtfully with accessibility and inclusion in mind. And we could just do what they're trying to do and have less people who are on income support and less people who are reliant on funded services. But it can't happen unless we make that investment and we plan for that to reap its benefits, as you said, long down the road.
Mm-hmm. Nodding along with you all the way here.
Well, I'm glad. That's one thing that's really nice when we are able to connect, whether it's within our own community or provincially or nationally. People who are experiencing the same thing, see things the same way, and are on the same page. And then pushing that conversation outside of our own silos, right? We talked about Indigenous, but there are so many other barriers that people experience, and some people experience multiple barriers. They're new Canadians with a disability. They're Indigenous with a disability. They are their sexuality is different, and so we have to also carry this conversation on to these other groups that face these barriers. And have that shared understanding, because we can all nod along together and we can really get a better sense of what a holistic and inclusive society looks like if we have those stakeholders at the table and we can consolidate that message to those community builders so that they're not building these communities without these groups in mind.
Exactly. Very big, very important word I didn't learn until university, but intersectionality.
Absolutely.
The different intersections of what a human being actually is.
Yeah. And that's
because there's more than one.
Yeah, human beings are by nature so complex. We talk a little bit in some of our business training about the average employee. Even if you look in neurotypical and able-bodied, there's no such thing as an average person.
No such thing.
That doesn't exist. What you really need to look at is how many different ways can people interact with my business as a customer, as an employee, how can I build a landscape where there's as many opportunities for people to connect? So having that mindset, we can include people. And as you kind of mentioned earlier, when people from different walks of life are included, it can add another perspective. It can add another lens. I use an example that's not disability related, but talking about how when there was a rise in the financial world for a need for halal mortgages for those people who are of the Muslim faith, mm-hmm. Those bigger banks that had already hired people who were from Muslim communities and had that diverse background of faith, those banks were able to turn around and offer that service a lot quicker because they didn't have to learn what a halal mortgage is. They had already invested in inclusion and diversity in their organization, and they had people already there to advise. The same thing goes when it's about accessibility. You have people at the table in your organization that you can draw from who experience these issues, and you're trying to add a service that includes customers. It's invaluable to have that perspective already in your organization, which is, again, talking about investment. I have a colleague, Mike Wing, who I'll shout out. And what we do is we text back and forth bad examples of accessibility. And the cause of that is that those people that decided to make this accessibility or this accessible space didn't have somebody at the table who actually experienced that limited accessibility. And so that's always the recipe, is making sure that, organizations, and there are people at the table, whether it's with an employer or it's with a government office, that will know because they experience it. It's invaluable.
Absolutely. Are there any events coming up for Catalyst?
So events, we every October, obviously, we're very involved in Disability Employment Awareness Month. So this year we're forming a partnership with our Chamber of Commerce and ATB, actually. So ATB, I should describe that, because outside of Alberta, you might not know. ATB is a bank that operates entirely. It's a Crown corporation in Alberta, so it's the largest kind of banking group within Alberta, but it really only operates in Alberta for the most part. But they've been a fantastic partner for inclusion, so we're going to work with them, and we're going to. What we hope to do is provide some sessions to employers, because October also happens to be Small Business Month, at least in Alberta. Some sessions with employers to talk about inclusion, to talk about diverse labor forces and underutilized workforces, and so that's something that the Chamber of Commerce in Lethbridge, where I'm located, and across Alberta, has been really in favor of. And we're also trying to collaborate with some of the labor unions that exist in Alberta to bring that conversation. So that's something that we're targeting a little bit further down the road. But yeah, outside of that, we're just always trying to make sure that we're out there in community. We do have some things that we're doing with our kind of local business landscape. Going to be involved in the Business of the Year Awards. We're going to try and organize an Inclusive Business of the Year Award, which we have done in the past, and recognize employers who have already successfully integrated inclusion, and it's made a benefit, and put the scope on them to kind of add some validation to what our philosophy is that inclusion is good for business. So if we can highlight those employers who have done so successfully and have done so thoughtfully and have reaped the benefits of that, we want to put the spotlight on them. So yeah, some of what we're doing in the near future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just that whole philosophy. That's a win. Just chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Love it. If someone wanted to become a member or a volunteer with Catalyst, what's the process for doing that?
I would urge them to connect to us. So our website is catalystworks.ca. And SACLA.ca is the Southern Alberta Community Living Association's website. And there are ways to contact us there. We do have a small social media presence, but I would also recommend connecting on a grander scale with the Alberta Employment First Network, which is aefn.ca. It's a great way to make that connection and join that network of people who are stakeholders in this conversation.
Excellent. So what's the one thing that everybody needs to know about Catalyst?
About Catalyst is that we are, it depends on who the audience is. If it's a business, we're subject matter experts who can help businesses leverage the benefits of building and inclusion. And if it's for somebody that's looking for support, we're trying to, aim as high as we can. We are we want them to know that, employment support isn't a straightforward process. We're not just going to do vocational training and then fill out resumes and we'll just shoot them out randomly. That sort of typical recruitment process. We do our human-centered design and discovery process. We invest in what your ability is, and we get creative with employers or with self-employment to really put those those assets out there to the community in the best way that we can. So we want to connect with people who want to really thoughtfully connect with employment or self-employment. Yeah, I think that kind of captures it.
Spiffy, getting away from that boilerplate model that everybody just loves. Not.
Yeah, definitely. There's no formula for any human service. Boil this down to a checklist. And so,
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, y'all got the point. I love it. No, Catalyst just sounds like one big success story in and of itself.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, we're still growing. We're a small operation, and we've had missteps along the way, and I'm sure there are people that haven't thrived the way that we hope for when they start our service, but we're always aiming for that. And along the way, we have hit some excellent home runs that I'm very, very proud of, but we can always be better.
Everyone and everything can, though. That's the whole point of growth.
Absolutely.
If listeners are looking for more information, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, catalystworks.ca. Can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so I think it's Mitch-Lawson1. Can reach out to me directly, Mitch at catalystworks.ca. And then again, sacla.ca and the aefn.ca. Great ways to connect with not only myself, but the organizations that are working together on this mission.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time today, Mitch.
Yeah, thank you so much for having this opportunity to talk about this and for having a platform into the world of disability and being a part of that, that community exposure that's so necessary. I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing and that we can, have our own little part in that.
No, it's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
You've been listening to a Community Partners interview on Voices for Ability Radio. I'm your host, Lilly Cereghini. And remember, folks, stick together because we are all in this together.